people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another look at the recent signees to most valuable promotions. In this video, we're going to talk about two-weight unified champion Dena Thorslund of Denmark. Another champion to add to the collection. A week ago it was Alicia Baumgartner, now it's Dena Thorslund, who is perhaps the best two-weight champion you haven't heard about, one of the best women fighters you likely haven't heard about, because all this time she's been based out of her native Denmark. And you really have to look, you really have to search for Dena's fights. But believe me when I tell you, if you see her in action, you won't be disappointed. Sporting an unblemished record of 23 wins with no losses, 9 knockouts. The best in show at 118 pounds, where Sharita Metcalf holds the IBF and Shernika Johnson holds the WBA. Dena has the other two titles. So what is the virtue of signing Dena Thorslund at this stage in her career, when not that long ago she was talking about taking time off, taking a hiatus from the sport, perhaps having a child, making an addition to her family? What's the virtue in signing her now? And I would say with Dena, the virtue is that the work is already done. She's already an elite fighter. She just needs a bigger stage to fight on. Last in action in October of last year, opposite the ring to Rumi Nuki, who she won a unanimous decision against. The reason she was courting retirement is because she was looking for bigger opportunities, but there were none available at that time. Not up until most valuable promotions decided to pick her up. And it's a hell of a signing. Dena's 31 years old. She's not the youngest fighter. She's not as young as, say, Naomi Valle, but she's not so old that you can't find use for her. 31 years old. She's already an elite-level talent, so you don't have to worry about developing her and all that kind of stuff like you have to do with Naomi Valle, for example. No, with Dena, it's all about getting her the unification matches she needs to become the undisputed champion at 118. And I believe that with most valuable promotions behind her, she can see that happen in the next 12 months. Some of the other fighters are going to take a bit more work, a bit more elbow grease, whereas with Dena, all you really have to do is make the fights, secure the opponents, and she'll take care of the rest. That's a Sharita Metcalf fight. That's a Shernika Johnson fight. Oddly enough, those are not the biggest fights for Dena Thorslund at or around these weights. Those will get her the undisputed crown. And I don't think there has ever been a women's undisputed bantamweight champion, so she may very well be the first. But even with that, that's not the biggest fight for Dena. I would say the biggest fight for Dena is Ellie Scottney, unified champion at 122 pounds, where some time ago Dena reigned as WBO champion herself. I would say that on the timeline we're on, by the time Dena unifies the bantamweight division, Ellie Scottney may have unified the super bantamweight division, what could be a battle of the undisputed champions. Now, this is contingent upon Ellie Scottney spending the next 12 months in the super bantamweight division. I don't know for sure that she's going to do that, because there was some mention of her moving up to fight Skye Nicholson, who's now coming off her first professional loss. So that is a bit of a gray area as to whether or not Ellie Scottney will stay at 122 long enough that Dena might move up in weight to take her on. But if I had to guess, what's the biggest fight for Dena? That's a bigger fight than a Shernika Johnson fight. That's a bigger fight than a Sharita Metcalf fight. That would be Dena Thorslund's whale. For me and my money, that is the only 50-50 fight at or around these weights for Dena. Why am I so confident in Dena? Because Dena's just as versatile as Ellie Scottney, with more experience, more fights, more rounds in the bank. She's seen pure boxers. She's seen pressure fighters, boxer punchers. She's basically seen it all. She saw a pressure fighter, and Mary Romero put the pressure on her. backed her up and backed her off. Saw another one in a younger fighter in Serene Satine.
Completely outclassed her. She outclassed the pure boxer in Mexico's own Yuli Hangluna, then WBC champion.
She's seen it all, so all she needs at this stage is someone with enough money to secure her the other title fights and the big stage to fight on. The rest, she'll take care of the rest, because she's that damn good.
You have to respect what Jake Paul, Nakisa Badarian, and Amanda Serrano are doing at Most Valuable Promotions.
Establishing themselves as a force to be reckoned with. The Alicia Baumgartner signing was a big signing, but this rounds it all out.
The stable.
Congratulations to her. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, former unified welterweight champion Keith Thurman said, "If not Tim Kazoo, I would still like the Errol Spence Jr. fight or a Charlo fight. Also, Crawford, Fundora, or maybe even Virgil Ortiz, all at 154. But who knows? As I stay in shape, I might be able to still compete at 147. It is still up for debate. I want to test Ryan Garcia."
That's what Keith Thurman had to say about it. Most of those names are otherwise preoccupied, and I think Keith Thurman knows that, which is why he mentioned them. You talk about Terrence Crawford. Terrence is en route to a Canelo fight, and he's likely to retire after that.
Terrence is preoccupied with the Canelo fight. Sebastian Fundora is preoccupied with the Xander Zayas fight.
Fighting somebody else, like a Keith Thurman, would cost him the brown belt.
And he still has Virgil Ortiz in the queue via the WBC. The same Virgil Ortiz that Keith Thurman just mentioned, except I don't think he's serious because I don't think the Ortiz fight pays enough.
Not in America.
But maybe in Saudi. If Turki El Sheikh were to pick it up, not saying that he would, I don't think he has Keith Thurman on his radar. But Keith was willing to fight in Australia, fly out to Australia. So maybe for the right price, he'd be willing to fly out to Saudi. No, the only name that Keith mentioned that I think he was serious about was Ryan Garcia.
It's the only name he mentioned where I think he means business. He would fight Ryan. The rest of those guys are busy and don't pay enough.
Because he also mentioned former undisputed champion Jermell Charlo, who's rumored to be returning to the junior middleweight division. But what does Thurman versus Charlo do in America here today? What does that bring in at the gate? What does that bring in at the box office? Jermell is naturally bigger than you are and a lot more experienced at this weight than you are.
The only angle I see that might make Thurman want to fight him is that Jermell hasn't fought in close to 2 years.
It's the only reason I think he brought him up, but that fight doesn't pay much. It's not like Jermell Charlo's stock is on the up and up.
You mentioned Errol Spence, too.
When you mention Errol Spence Jr. as a potential opponent, it's very obvious why. It's obvious why Team Fundora chased that guy around for all of a year, didn't get the goddamn fight.
It's obvious why Oscar De La Hoya named Errol Spence Jr. as a fight he'd like to make for Virgil. It's obvious why Keith is mentioning him. It's because the guy hasn't fought in close to 2 years, and the last time he did, he got beaten half to death.
He's low-hanging fruit. That's the only reason Keith would be looking at him now, where before, when they were both champions at the same weight, at the same time, reigning parallel to each other, Keith couldn't be bothered to fight Errol Spence Jr. then, so that he can bring him up now, when he's quasi-retired, coming off a loss, doesn't have a trainer, hasn't fought in close to 2 years. It's obvious why he's doing that.
But I don't know if Errol is going to go for it.
I don't know. I literally don't know. If they could dust Errol Spence Jr. off at the PBC and put him in there with Keith, they might try, but I don't know that Errol himself really wants to do that and give Keith Thurman the satisfaction.
The Brock Jarvis fight was intended to be a segue to a summer showdown with Tim Kazoo, provided that Tim beats Joey Spencer. Now, I think depending on how he beats Joey Spencer, that will determine whether or not Keith fights him.
If Tim goes back to looking strong and sharp and switched on, the way he looked before his last 2 fights, if he goes back to looking that way, I don't think Keith is going to want to fight him. But at the same time, most of the fights that he mentioned, if not all of them, save this one, Most of those fights are not available to him, because I told you. Terrence is fighting Canelo. Sebastian looks to be fighting Xander.
Errol is quasi-retired. Jermell Charlo doesn't pay that much, and neither does Virgil Ortiz. Not if it's just on Golden Boy's dime. Maybe if Turkey picks it up.
Ryan Garcia. He'd be looking at Ryan Garcia because Ryan's worth a lot of money, whether you like him or not. He is estimated to be making $20 million for the upcoming Rolly Romero fight. Being honest with you, I don't think Gervonta made $20 million from fighting Rolly, but Ryan is about to on Turkey El Sheikh's dime.
Keith Thurman is a fighter in his mid-30s, who if he's boiling down to 147 pounds, it's basically because he's cashing out. One more big payday, one more big purse. He looks at Ryan, a fighter who's already been knocked out by a smaller fighter in Gervonta Davis, and he tells himself, if I'm going to make 147 again, it'd be for that guy, because he's been beat before, he's been knocked out before.
He's not as experienced as I am. I've been a unified champion, where he's never been a champion of any kind. Not a full champion, not a bona fide champion. And he's worth a lot of money.
Naturally smaller than a Tim Tszyu, and he pays better.
So there are some obvious incentives for Keith Thurman eyeing a Ryan Garcia fight. The question is, why would Ryan eye Keith?
Why?
What does Ryan get out of fighting Keith? We know what Keith stands to make. What does Ryan get out of it?
Not a lot.
And don't forget that Ryan Garcia is spoken for too. If he takes care of business with Rolly Romero, and Devin takes care of business against Jose Ramirez, they're supposed to be meeting up later on this year. So if what you're talking about is a fight with a Ryan Garcia moving down there for him, you must be talking about a fight that would go down at some point next year. And how old is Keith Thurman going to be by next year?
He's looking for alternatives to the Tim Tszyu fight, most of which are not viable options when you look a little deeper.
They'll pay him a pretty penny to come out to Australia to fight Tim, but if what you're looking for is more money in America, that means more risks, because a Virgil Ortiz fight to me is a riskier fight than a Tim Tszyu fight.
Even a Jermell Charlo fight, even with the layoff, because he's naturally bigger. That's a riskier fight than a Tim Tszyu fight, I think. Right now it is.
I don't even know that it pays as much money as a Tim Tszyu fight when I think about it, because it's not like Jermell's stock is on the up and up. Keith is doing what he normally does, filling the air with a bunch of nonsense,
while being a brazen opportunist.
And that's why I don't look at a lot of these guys as the gladiators that they make themselves out to be, because underneath it all, they're opportunists, just like everybody else. Disingenuous ones.
Keith is an opportunist.
But he's also not a hot commodity right now. There's only so much money that people are going to offer today's Keith Thurman to do a fight. And if what you want is big money in America for a fight, that means big risks.
He ain't about that. He wasn't about that when he was a younger man. I don't think he's about that now.
Think he's gonna be about that now after all this time? In his mid to late 30s? He's milking this Brock Jarvis knockout win for everything it's worth, and the problem is, it isn't worth that much.
Pump the brakes, Keefy.
Over to Jermell Charlo. Former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo's presumed return to the junior middleweight division. The people at Boxing News 24 described it as long dormant. Jermell Charlo came out of the woodwork this week, posting a short video workout clip and telling his followers on Instagram that 154 is mine until I'm finished. If Charlo thinks he's ageless because he's been trapped in ember for 66 million years like dinosaur DNA, he's crazy.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier reacted to Jermell's return by saying, "What a phony. What incredibly suspect timing Jermell Charlo has. As soon as Terrence Crawford announced he was leaving 154 to fight Canelo, within days, Jermell Charlo says he's coming back to 154. Charlo twins are so phony. It's another fine example."
It's true that immediately after his big win over Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford gestured to Jermell Charlo that he wants him next. Jermell was seated ringside.
I believe he was still a champion at the time. I believe he still had one or two of his alphabet titles, the Ring Magazine and Lineal Status, and Terrence Crawford wanted to take it from him. A lot of time has passed since then. We're coming up on 2 years, close to 2 years.
And it's been more like 3 since Jermell Charlo actually made 154, which is why I had my own reservations as to whether or not he would come back to that weight. But apparently, he means to. And the boxing world is not peeing and shitting itself with excitement that he's on the verge of coming back. Perhaps it's because of how he looked the last time we saw him. See, a fighter like Jermell makes you feel bamboozled. You talked all of that shit, all that big talk about what you were going to do to Canelo Alvarez, just so that when you're finally in the ring with him, you ran. You wouldn't engage, you wouldn't fight, and you didn't try.
You showed up for a check.
Being an undisputed champion, a lot was expected of Jermell Charlo, and what we got was another track star, another track meet, another guy who's content just not getting knocked out, another guy who's content just surviving and cashing the check later. So the customers feel bamboozled.
And it doesn't help that you strategically placed your comeback at the time that Terence Crawford is leaving the division. Terence Crawford wanted to fight you. We all know that. And it seems like you were waiting him out, waiting for him to leave. Because when he's on the way up, you're on the way down.
Jermell is not going to get any kind of respect for coming back and playing it safe. I feel like the only way for Jermell Charlo to really communicate that he's back and get that across is to fight the likes of Bakram Murtazaliev, IBF champion, the guy who you paid to step aside all those years so that you could unify titles with the other champions, but still.
The guy you paid to step aside, the guy who knocked out Tim Tszyu, the Tim Tszyu that you were supposed to fight. He fought him, and he beat him, and he's an unbeaten champion.
He finished that unfinished business for you. He took out Tim, and I feel like for Jermell Charlo to get some respect, get back some respect, that's who he needs to fight.
You know, Sebastian Fundora is otherwise preoccupied.
He has to deal with Xander Zayas, and after that, he may have to deal with Virgil Ortiz.
He's got two of the belts.
Bakram Murtazaliev has one, and Terence Crawford has the other. But because Terence Crawford is moving up to 168, he's likely to vacate that WBA title, and Jermell Charlo is right on time to come back and pick it up after it goes vacant. But it's not enough to pick up a title that nobody's holding anymore. To get some respect, you have to fight people.
He's coming back to an even deeper junior middleweight division than it was when he left. Oh, it's even deeper now and more dangerous.
And it's hard to imagine that he's going to make any money there without taking on some serious risks, some serious challenges, because the American boxing community has really had enough. I mean, a sizable portion of them don't even pay for the majority of pay-per-views that are being put out. A sizable portion of them are happy stealing them. So
there's no easy money out there.
Before, when Showtime was still in the picture, you at least had that safety net, that guarantee, that decent-sized guarantee that they provided. But now, you don't have that anymore. The PBC's on Amazon, and Amazon's not really made a commitment to boxing.
You're gonna have to earn your keep now.
Disgraceful performance against Canelo Alvarez. You say that Canelo is one of the best fighters in the sport. There really shouldn't be any shame in losing to him, but there is when you talk such a good game. You say all this stuff just so that when you're in there with him, you ran. You ran for 36 minutes.
That's what we paid $80 to see.
You take a tour of the turnbuckles as you try to put distance between yourself and Canelo, who you said you were going to beat up and all of that stuff.
It's an uphill battle for Jermell Charlo. You can come back if you want to come back.
But to get some respect, you got to fight real fighters. Fight in real fights.